Welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today we have Adam Pakiela. Adam is a BCBA. He is a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, fellow TapCancerOut Ambassador. Adam, man, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem, John. I appreciate the invite and happy to be here.
Totally my pleasure to have you. I know we share two huge passions, maybe three, I'll say. Jiu-Jitsu, TapCancerOut, and ASD, right? ASD, I guess, how do I say that? A passion to learn more, be involved, and caring for those folks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel like with that, can you share a little bit about, kind of for my benefit for sure, and hopefully some others here, what it is to become, or what it means to be a BCBA, and then share a little bit about kind of your involvement, what led you to learning more about, people with autism or ASD, and what brought you to choosing this as your career path?
Sure. Oh, I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I graduated in 2005 with an undergraduate psychology. And what happened was, when I graduated, I couldn't really find a job. I was also, a lifeguard. Like, up until this point in my life, I've had like 35 jobs. Yeah. So I did customer service. I've been in retail. I've been, in restaurants. And for me, graduating and going to work in the psychology realm, I wasn't really feeling like I was going to be compensated. They were talking about, this is 2005. They're talking about like $10, $11 an hour to work with super aggressive people in hospital settings. And to this day, those people still don't make enough money. They get their asses kicked more than you and I do that, and they're getting paid pennies.
Right.
So I was like, I can't justify that. And I got a job. I entered at Monster.com for a teacher in New York City for a research project through Johns Hopkins Medicine, Johns Hopkins University. And it was, the patient was a individual with autism who was only 4 years younger than me, 18.
Wow.
And that was really interesting because it kind of exposed me to the first time of working with people with autism.
Yeah.
And I would say this, like, if anyone in your fan base is of autistic community, are either parents or individuals, I might switch back and forth, just because depending upon who you talk to, some people think it's okay to say individual with autism. Other people think it's okay to say, autistic individuals. So I'll switch back and forth just to try to accommodate that. That's something that I try to be sensitive to.
Yeah.
And I don't know, so I just incorporate everybody. So this individual had autism, and he was awesome. He was nonverbal up until he was about 16 years old. And working closely with him, I saw that really, when you see an individual with autism, they're like the expression of emotion. You're never going to see a happier person. You're never going to see a sadder person. You're never going to see a more scared person. So these emotions, they literally wear them on their sleeve. And it was so amazing to see, like, little bit of progress he would make, and the amount of work that we would put in was amazing. Like, it was really to see the benefit of putting all this hard work. And that exposed me to ABA. And I saw that one of my past supervisors said to me, she said, Adam, if you don't like a behavior, you actually have the power to change it, to alter it. If there's something that's doing that's dangerous, or something that's harmful to you or him or us, you have the power, being a practitioner, to change it. And it really stuck with me. And I took that, and then I moved out of the city and moved into Connecticut. And at that time, my wife, now my girlfriend, then I was unemployed, and she was telling me, she goes, I'm not going to let you accept a job that's less than your worth. Because I don't like handouts. So I was collecting unemployment, but I was still working because I was making sure that I'm going to do anything to try to support us. I came to a crossroads, and I was either going to be a facilitator for like seniors, like a company trainer for them, really like the effect of training people, or I would go and work in a private school for individuals with autism, and the private school and back.
Wow.
So I went and worked with some, again, some pretty aggressive individuals. Wasn't getting paid very well, but they were giving me the support needed to get supervised to become a BCBA.
Yeah.
And then I got certified. I started my master's and graduated in December 2015. Finished my hours for experience hours, which you need for a BCBA, and got certified in May of 2016 after taking my test only one time, which is a huge accomplishment. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and I've been doing that ever since.
That's amazing. So it leads me to a couple of quick questions. One thing that this is a little bit more of a comment, maybe you can expand on it though, that I found really interesting about this is that, and you touched on it a little, it seems like a requirement to actually work with, I don't want to say necessarily children, but people with ASD in order to get these certifications along the way. Is that correct?
There's a couple of different paths. The first path is if you have a GED or a high school diploma, you can be called a registered behavior technician. That's an RBT. And those are the frontline people. Those are the most important people when it comes to what you call them ABA therapists or BTs or something like that. And those are the people that work with the clients. And they are supervised by a master's level or a doctorate level clinician, such as myself. I'm master's, but they're a doctorate level also. And they can also be supervised by next level of certification, which is a BCABA. So it's a board certified assistant behavior analyst. And those people need supervised also by someone above them, like a DBA, such as myself. And they, at every level, you need to pass an exam. And the exam get progressively harder and the questions get longer and more complicated. But ultimately, you have to have some. It used to be that you have to work with individuals, or you could just work with individuals, and the people not getting the necessary experience. So then they changed the rules a couple of years ago, where you need to actually do some behind-the-scenes stuff, like writing reports and doing assessments. For realizing that the supervisors, such as self, were going into these situations to supervise staff, and they had never learned how to train a person. They worked great with kids. They didn't know how to train people, or they didn't know how to do reports or all these things. So it's a constantly evolving practice. It's a constantly evolving credential. It's honestly, the thing that I think prompted you to reach out to me was one of the posts that I made on Autism Awareness Day. But then it was also the other post about, hey, if you are happy in your job and you're in a helping field, you loving people, going from an RBT to a DBA, if you have a bachelor's level, or even if you have a high school diploma, inside 5 years, double or even triple your salary. And you're still doing stuff that is helpful to people, and you're still doing that you love. So yes, the long-winded answer is yes, you do need to get some experience working with people, but ultimately you're supervised by higher level clinicians as it's mandatory.
Yeah, it's so helpful. Thank you. Yeah. One thing, and then, switching gears just slightly, but one thing I wanted to touch on too was that there's a lot of acronyms. So ABA, Applied Behavioral, is it analysis?
Applied Behavior Analysis.
So I guess that's essentially the principle, if I'm correct here, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of these philosophies are based on. This is how we can help people change behaviors, as you spoke to before, and kind of techniques around that. Just as a parent, and I want to make this a little personal just for a moment to me, our situation, as a son, a 3-year-old with ASD, he's in a lot of different therapies, and we have a really good support system for him here. But we've had to learn all this over the past year and a half, and we're doing our best, and it's great. But one thing, I say all that just to get some context to say this, and I wonder just if you, more as a parent or as a husband, in real life, like the ABA techniques I've learned to help my 3-year-old use his fork, or to make eye contact, these really things that are basic to other people, but like have been instrumental in his development and the progress he's made to our lives. Those little techniques I've taken, and they've made me a better dad to my 11-year-old daughter, and a better husband. And I think hopefully a better employee, because I listen and I'm being active. And these are techniques and things that are minor, but have such major impact in my life. In so many ways, how I look and perceive other people, namely, and then 2, how I act. So I say all that to say, like, it's made me a better person. This has really made me a better person. Do you feel like some of this stuff rewired and made you, and maybe not a better person, that may be too much, but like, do you feel like you found these principles and these techniques that you apply into like every other relationship in your life?
I do. And sometimes that's actually a detriment, because when you work with individuals, you sometimes need to look at a behavior in the moment, and you need to extrapolate out in your mind what that's going to be like in 5 years. If it's not correct, it's not fixed. So sometimes I'm actually too hard on my kids. I have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and I sometimes forget to just let them be kids and make mistakes, those types of things. But then the thing that showed me the most is the amount of patience that I have is greater than what I think I have in the moment. So because of my job, I need to be extremely patient. I need to sometimes wait out tantrums, I need to wait out behaviors, I need to wait out aggressive episodes. And when you think you can't wait another second and you have to do something, the little voice in the back of my mind, now's the time you have to be strong. You have to get it out, because if you give the reinforcement now, you're going to undo all of the 20, 30, 40 minutes that you've been tolerating this and being patient. So you really just got to push through. And it's very similar to exercise. I can't do another rep, but I got to do another rep, or I can't possibly do this for another minute. And with my kids and my wife and my friends and my family, it's increased my patience. And I'm a pretty patient person in general, but it increased that to, X degree. And I'm really happy that you said that the skills that you're learning in ABA and therapy and with your son's, supervisors and staff, you're translating into their areas, because that's not always the reputation that ABA gets. In the past, that's been really focused on, hard-nosed, like we call it extinction, which is just not encountering reinforcement. So is having a tantrum or running away, we find to be in a chair. This is old ABA, and that's not the way that it's going. Now it's more naturalistic teaching. It's called NET. So it's naturalistic environment teaching. And we kind of, like you said, bring kid or the individual to us. We increase their motivation, come to us, rather than, hey, John, come to me and listen. So I pick you up and put you in the chair. Now I play with your favorite toy, and your favorite toy is in my hand, and you're like, oh my God, and run over. And then we can start working on things. And that just shows you that you can get like you get a lot more flies with honey vinegar. The toy is the honey, and the vinegar is me picking you up. Like, I get compliance out of you, but is it the way that I want to? I'm going to induce your behavior, your good behavior, in a more natural environment, a natural way, and I'm going to follow you around rather than me lead the session. So that's kind of how ABA has changed in terms of a science and a practice. All the principles are still there, but we're learning to be a little bit more cuddly, a little bit more soft and free, as opposed to like hammer. We're a hammer and else is a nail.
I love it. I love it, and I see virtue in both. But I do believe this evolution is better. It's a better direction. Yeah, exactly. Because there's so much of this is about finding those motivators, to incentivize them, but then also keeping the firm line. And and as a parent, man, what a benefit this has been to my wife, our relationship as parents, and all the intangibles, to have resources like RBTs come to our house, because we can learn just by watching sometimes and seeing what they model, and then they communicate what you're doing. They explain why, and and it has helped us. And I know for sure it's helped him, my son as well. But awesome, man. Great feedback. Kind of switching gears a little onto maybe jujitsu and some fun TapCancerOut stuff too. One quick thing before we jump into that, I didn't know you were an MMA fighter, man. How many fights have you had, or what was that journey?
So I had 7 unofficial, and I think like a couple. They didn't count a couple of ones in Pennsylvania, so I think technically on my record I had like 5.
Wow.
But I stopped fighting pretty much the week we conceived my son. So that was 6 years ago. November 2014 was my last fight. And I love it and I miss it, but I'm filling that void with jiu-jitsu and going full bore into jiu-jitsu.
You led me to my next question. So was it fighting then jiu-jitsu, or jiu-jitsu then fighting? What came first?
So quick story. I met a guy at a bar in Astoria, and we were just BSing about UFC fights and stuff. This was, I think, like 2008 or 2009. He goes, hey man, you look like you're in pretty decent shape. I wasn't at the time in decent shape, but he was being very flattering. And he said, hey, you should come to my gym. We can kickboxing and boxing, and we're, we got some MMA classes. And I said, great. Went in, took my first class. Afterwards, they're like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to fight. Goes, no, that's great, but like, what do you want? I'm like, I want to fight. I grew up competition, soccer, football, track, doing all through college. I missed that. So I went into fight, and then my coach, at the time, he got me into, more wrestling-based, no-gi-based jiu-jitsu, along with striking and Muay Thai and stuff like that. And then after we had my son, I was like, I can't devote kind of time. And if you're going to go into a MMA fight, you need to be able to defend yourself, and otherwise it's going to do serious damage. So I was like, let's just do jiu-jitsu. And it was awesome. Like I'm not looking back. I'm a purple belt, and I said when I got my pro, I was like, now my wife knows, like, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not going to get the blue belt blues and quit. So
Yeah.
now I'm in this for black and beyond.
Yeah, that's, it is same here. So I never was a fighter, but I definitely had a wrestling base. So I had that longing for that competitive. I wanted that. I understand that urge. And then jujitsu completely filled that void for me too. And one thing I love about it, even though that I'm injured now, it's a sport. It can be an identity if you choose it. The community is awesome, but you can do it until you're 70 or 80. And I love that. That's something that's awesome. So how did you find Tap Cancer Out? I know we're both fellow ambassadors. We met in kind of a crazy way, in an awesome way. It makes for a great story, I guess. But how did you find Tap Cancer Out? Just through competing or fundraising? How did that happen?
So John and Becky, the founders of Tap Cancer Out, they used to live in Connecticut and used to live, I think, in Bradford. And I, at the time was in Connecticut, and a buddy of mine, Evan, he has a daughter who is a ridiculous competitor. And she was always on social media blasting out this competition she was doing to Tap Cancer Out. And I had never really gotten into actually looking into what it was or anything like that. And I got a year and a half off of jiu-jitsu. When I came back, the gym that I was at, they're actually one of their top fundraising teams, GFT Connecticut. And they were pushing it really hard. And I was like, hey, what's the difference? I can go and I can compete for free and raise some money for an awesome house. Great. And I raised money. I think I raised close to like $2,200 the first time I competed for them.
Yeah.
And I did this thing. I wish I had a picture that I could pull up, but I was with my belt. I was a blue belt at the time. And the person that donated, they wrote the name of who they were donating a name of. And I took a piece of tape and I wrote the name and put it around my belt. So I had like 15 or 20 strips. I looked like a 15 stripe blue belt. People thought that I was a sandbagger, but it had all of their names on there. And I lost. I learned a lot from that experience as far as competition. But the other thing I learned is it's not that I didn't care about losing, but the blow losing was so much less because I knew that I had done so much good in raising money for this organization. And I was like, I'm hooked. I'm in, man. You need. I volunteered. I competed, and then at the show that I was going to do, I did a showcase in Massachusetts that same year, and then unfortunately, the case that we were on, I think last year in August, they had pushed that back, and they were originally going to have the competition, the tournament, and they were going to have the case on the same night in Connecticut. And obviously, COVID pushed everything back. I was going to do the showcase. I was going to compete and I was also going to volunteer, and I was going to fundraise. Yeah. So I was like, I'm fully in. Then when they talked about the ambassador program, I was like, all right, fine. Whatever you guys need, whatever you need, I will help.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I feel like, and if those of you, if you have 5 minutes today and you're unaware, go check out Tap Cancer Out. This is an amazing organization, a nonprofit organization. They contribute to the research of pediatric cancers and donate to those sort of associations like Alex's Lemonade, for example, and a few others. But they're a great organization. Same similar sort of thing again, man, Adam. So it was an opportunity for me to compete, and then through it changed my life. I mean, this wouldn't happen today if probably I never found Tap Cancer Out, for sure. But yeah, just through what I tell people too, especially since my injury, is I volunteered last year at the Philadelphia card. And just as a volunteer, right? So I wasn't competing as a competitor, and that was as equally as like rewarding of an experience. And I didn't have to lose or get nervous or get hurt, so it was in some ways better. But it was awesome, and I've met so many friends. And I think jiu-jitsu on the whole, there's a good community. If you want that, you can find that. You can find really good people. But there's something really special about the Tap Cancer Out group. I mean, we really support each other, and this is an example of that, man. Like, you're somebody that it's funny, social media and COVID, we're so disconnected from people, but I feel as though, I could text you at any point or something if I had a real question, about my son or something, and I owe a lot of that to TCO,
Yeah, we would never have met, and our story is kind of crazy. I mean, You showed up at the Connecticut sub-only showcase.
I'll let you tell it. Yeah.
You had no one in your corner. I think you had written on the ambassador group page, like, hey man, I'm coming in. Is there anyone, I'm a blue belt. Is there anyone that wouldn't mind getting in my corner? I was like, this guy's putting himself out there. I mean, I'm just a purple belt, but I'll happily help him. Yeah. And we sat down, we met each other. I think we were actually like one of the first 2 people that weren't part of the gym that were there at the event. Yeah. And we talked for a little bit. You told me your game plan. I gave you a little bit of like a little tip, and we warmed up in the back and and it didn't go your way, but you had a good performance. And from there, we kind of have this conversation from time to time about some stuff. We're liking each other's posts and whatnot, and it's all because of Cancer Out. And as a kind of an addendum to that, even if you're not involved in jiu-jitsu, even if you're a very rare lucky person who's never had their life touched by cancer, everyone wears clothes. Their clothing, I don't know what John and Becky do, but their clothing is some of honestly the most comfortable stuff I've worn. This is a shirt that you can only from competing, and it's literally one of my favorite shirts. My other one is the one that you're wearing, which I was gonna wear today, and I thought that would look. I knew you were gonna wear it, and I was like, you're gonna look like a bunch of tools if we both have the same shirt on. But this is my second favorite one, aside from the hoodie and the hat. Literally, all of their stuff is great, and it all benefits cancer research, and I can't talk enough.
Yeah. What we'll do is I'll make sure to include your ambassador code. So folks, if they want to order, they can get a little discount as well.
Yeah. 10%. If you
I'll write that down too. I agree. My wife has stolen all of my sweatshirts from Tap Cancer because they're so soft. It's that fleece material inside. Yeah. So those are hers now. And I've accepted that loss. Yep. Yeah.
You bought her a present. It's nice.
That's all. So I guess let me ask this too. So you have 2 kids, that's right? 5 and 3?
I do. I have 5 and a 3-year-old.
Train jiu-jitsu, or are they still too young, or any?
It's not that they're young. I think they're just my son's not in the fit right now where he can be following directions very well. And also you'll realize this if you haven't already, it's real difficult to teach your own kids something that you're super passionate about.
Right.
So we recently moved to Florida, and I found a gym, and they have a good kids program. And until after my wife and I get our work schedule situated, we've again only been here a month, we're going to try to get them probably involved in that. And if he wants to, I mean, if he doesn't want to, that's cool. If he's like, oh, daddy's going to jiu-jitsu and I'm gonna do swimming, that's cool, do your thing, whatever it is. But if they want to do jiu-jitsu, I probably am going to have to take a back to that and just be the dad on the sidelines.
Yeah, keep it fun. Let someone else take the lead. I get. Well, congratulations on your move. So I wasn't aware you're in Florida. Are you? That's great. So I guess you said you're sort of adjusting. It's been a month there. That kind of leads me to another question. One thing that I think is really kind of interesting about you, just as a person, but 2, again with the BCBA stuff, is that I feel like you are a really big advocate for outdoor stuff, like fishing, hunting, those things, right? So is that sort of the reason you moved to Florida? Did that have anything to do with it, or?
So the reason is I love my wife and she hates the cold.
Okay.
So Connecticut gets pretty sullen and brutal in terms of winters. I mean, I know you're in like the Chicago area and it's windy and cold and gray for a lot of the winter. So that was a huge change. And also it's awesome for my hobbies. It's kind of a hub for jiu. There's a lot of schools around here and doing more stuff. But the other reason selfishly that we moved down here is it's just better for my job. It's kind of a hub for behavior analysis.
Okay.
In Connecticut, I could really only serve individuals with autism. And here, I can do more. I can serve, kids with ADHD. I can help kids that have minor depressive episodes and things like that, using different elements of science and more of like a therapy kind of session. And we can still bill for it as opposed to having to pay for it through private insurance, which gets super pricey if you're paying for it out of pocket. But I love the outdoors, and I actually try to incorporate outdoor activities as much as possible with any of my clients, just because. I mean, nature is an amazing resource that we don't avail ourselves of enough.
That's awesome, man. I'd love to maybe even offline learn more about your techniques around that, and just help do them with my son and my daughter. I love that. That's so great. And switching up the environment can be so important, especially for like a developing mind. I remember, I've learned so much about myself through my son's therapy. It's unbelievable. And he has certain he has body needs, he has a little lack of body awareness, which is part of being 3, I think too.
Right.
Right. But he definitely has he needs deep pressure and certain sensations and stuff. And as I learned these techniques to help him, I really realized, I'm like, man, I have a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just interesting. Can I just pause for one moment here? I
Sure.
need to plug this in really quick.
Sure.
I'll be back in 2 seconds.
All right.
Just a second. So can you give me a quick maybe example or maybe anecdote of, some of your therapies or techniques you would use sort of with your outdoor therapies?
Sure. So yesterday I was with a client and we hadn't been able to see him for about 2 weeks because COVID scare in the house and his mother had surgery. So one of the things that happens with individuals with autism is they have regression. So you'll have a skill that's, doing really well and then take a little bit of a break or something will happen and you'll kind of regress and they'll go back with that skill. And this kid, he was working really well with the therapist and I showed up for the supervision session and he was just shut down. He's like, I'm not going to do anything. So I just throw it out there. Hey man, there's a pond, a couple blocks away. I got my fishing stuff in my car. I always do. And I said, do you want to go go fishing? He's like, no. Oh, I'm going to go to my car. I'll bring the stuff in if you want to. So I increase his motivation like that.
Yeah.
And we're walking outside and we were doing letters and letter sounds. So what letter is this? What sound does it make?
Yeah.
And we're walking around and he's like, oh, look at that flower. Yeah, flower. What does that start with? F. What sound does it make? So we're taking the therapy into a more pleasurable environment.
Yeah.
And again, meeting good people. Knocked on this lady's door, said, excuse me, ma'am, would you mind if we, fished in your backyard? She said, sure. The kids caught 2 fish, him and his sisters. They each caught a fish. He got scared and kind of threw his hands back. So I reeled it in for him. He touched it and stuff. She came out, she gave them 2 rods and an entire tackle box full of stuff because they never use it and they're older. And they said, we want to give it to somebody that's going to use it. This is amazing. So the kid's got a learning experience in terms of his therapy. He's got an awesome ring catching fish for the first time himself. And he also got some swag out. So I mean, how can you go wrong?
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. And he met a neighbor and the neighbor met him.
The socialization, which he have a lot now.
Huge. How old is that child? I'm just curious.
He's around 30.
That's awesome. Man, even better. So man, 3 again. So you could have just sat in your living room, but because you had changed that environment and man, it's really cool that he was engaging. He was able to engage with flower after these things that were changing around him too. Wow, that's so impressive.
Cool. And we learned that he's scared of dogs, but he wants to go over to them. So that's the other thing. He's super intimidated when they bark, but he's sort of drawn to it. Then they bark and he takes back. So there's things that we can work on and, we can learn about him as well while we're in this situation.
Yeah. You touched on something earlier that was really, really important to me. So you had said with autistic folks, they wear their emotions on their sleeve, right? So if they're scared, they're scared. You see it. If they're happy, it's this pure unadulterated happiness and stuff. And I really appreciate that, man, because I look at my, and it's hard as a parent. You try not to compare children or compare anything. They're different human beings. They're totally 100%. Different, and I have my 11-year-old daughter and I have my 3-year-old son, but she was all I knew for a long time. So as a parent, that was the only basis of comparison I had to draw upon. Right. So I say that to say with my son, at least once a day, I see him get happy about his letters or his numbers or something, and he'll stim and get so happy that I promise once a day, I think to myself, man, I wish I felt that about anything.
Yes, exactly.
It's beautiful. And that, I think there's a gift to ASD, and their worlds are definitely different. And it's kind of, I feel like my job to help him feel as comfortable as possible. And communicate as best he can and help him in all those ways with resources and other people and to accept I don't know all the answers either. So it's part of my job to have people like you in my life to constantly educate me and to help me learn and for ever, people.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not like you go 18 or graduate or something and then you're there, it's like, we always could learn better techniques to have better behavior, I think. Right.
That's 100% correct.
Do you think that any of sort of, maybe this is a wild question, but do you think any sort of the techniques you learned you were able to apply to jiu-jitsu, like from a stepping sort of step by step, or the way you have to problem solve even?
Absolutely. So I'm a very literal person when it comes to problem solving. I incorporate a lot of almost like recipes. So jiu-jitsu is very technique based. So you can use good technique and it can overcome strength, stamina, and all these other things. So if you think about that in terms of ABA, is what we call a task analysis. You take the skill in and of itself and you break down into its component parts, almost like a recipe. So it's like, how are you going to do a Kimura from close guard? You're going to do this as step 1 and step 2. And you can't jump to step 2 because you need step 1 to have it be fit. So you need to be able to go through all of these steps. And that's helped me because that's how I think naturally. And they just gave me the framework about how to structure this and do it for my clients and how to work with them in that regard. So that's definitely something. And then also the element of training staff. Like there's an aspect of ABA that we use specifically to train staff members. And it has, again, almost like a recipe. Like you do this step and then you step and you make sure they have these resources, and then you follow up and give feedback and do role plays and feedback and role plays. So that has been something that's really good when I'm trying to teach a class and I'm teaching a fundamentals class and I got a whole bunch of spazzy white belts in there with me and I got to break a skill down in different ways so that this 7 steps works for this one, but this person needs 10 steps because they need those micro adjustments, those little things that they might have missed out. And then if you talk to a purple belt, he needs 3 steps because he's already doing the other things instinctually. So it's affected more than just like my work life, home life. It's affected, my competition and my hobbies as well.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Great.
Yeah.
So, I guess with that, any maybe words of wisdom or anything you want to leave us with, or even moreover, how can we contact you if someone has any questions or, anything about jiu-jitsu, BCBA stuff, anything?
Yeah. So first thing is, if you guys want to contact me, Instagram is probably the best. It's Theoutdoorbcba on Instagram, and you can DM me, you can comment on one of my posts, whatever you need. I'll happily disseminate information. It's actually part of our ethics code that we try to further the field in whatever way we can. So I was going to do that anyway, and I'm happy to do it as part of a, ethical responsibility. But I could leave you guys with anything. It would be involve yourself in the lives of those people that need help. And it doesn't necessarily need to be someone with special needs. It could be a person trying to cross the street. It could be anything. Like, try to pay something forward, because you never know when it's going to come back around. And just because a science or technique or something got a bad rap in 2005, specifically ABA I'm talking about, just think that there are good and bad practitioners in there's good and bad pediatric doctors, there's good and bad bakers and chefs and things like that. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Try to reach out to people that are experienced and do this for a passion and not necessarily earn it just for the money. And I hope that I'm one of those people. I love this field. I love this science. So if you have any questions, hey, is this the right method to use for my kid? It not be. You might have a really high functioning kid with autism, and traditional ABA, work at a table, naturalistic stuff I was talking about wasn't for you. And I'll tell you that. I'll be like, hey, that's fine. It's not for you. Like, there are these other therapies out there, but really reach out to subject matter experts, and not just one, not just your Facebook group or your crunchy moms or anything like that. Reach out to some people that really practice and really have seen some results and that you trust, and then use their guidance to make your decision and try to make it the most informed way possible. And if it could be me, I'm happy to do that. Yeah. And I hope it is, man. Yeah, absolutely. Man, thank you so much for that. I've learned a ton, and I'm always learning more, and you're such an important resource to me in my life. So I'm so excited that you were able to kind of share a little bit of this and kind of expand on it today. So that's so great. I'll be sure to include your TapCancerOut code too. So if people want to get their comfy clothes, they can use that also. This is True Story with John Gibson. Today we have Adam Pakiela. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much, John. I'll talk to you later, man.